Christmas is nearly upon us, and I've been considering the importance of Christianity as a sort of cultural concept, not necessarily as a religious one. Um, in other words, our culture, when I say our culture, I mean British culture as well as Western culture, has an affiliation with Christian traditions and values, but I don't necessarily adhere to the religious doctrine itself of Christianity. In other words, I consider myself a cultural Christian, but in a sense reject the supernatural dogma of Christianity. And this position seems to be flourishing among the sort of the elites, the chattering classes. If you look at the author Douglas Murray or the scientist Richard Dawkins, Elon Musk, amongst other prominent figures, these people are from varied industries and backgrounds. They've adopted this stance of cultural Christianity. And I believe it's because we believe in the legacy of Christianity that we adopt this position. For me personally, I can't commit myself to the supernatural elements of the faith. What I can do is appreciate the cultural inheritance of the faith. In other words, amongst other things, the ethical teachings, the art, the music, while simultaneously rejecting the sort of supernatural elements. Essentially, by acknowledging the cultural contributions of Christianity, I'm trying to emphasize that one can appreciate its role without necessarily subscribing to the theological doctrines of it. And as I'm sort of pondering this topic, one or two things come to mind, and that is why the chattering classes are embracing cultural Christianity as a thing, really. And two, what are the consequences of rejecting Christianity for not just Britain, but for Western civilization in general? I think that these two questions are probably interconnected. And if you think about what happens when Christian narratives are undermined, I would contrive that society begins to unravel. Think of G.K. Chesterton. He converted to Catholicism later on in life, and he articulated that, and I quote, "The Catholic Church is the only thing that saves a man from the degrading slavery of being a child of his age." And of course, he's attributed as saying, I think it was actually, this quote should be attributed to somebody else, but it's certainly been attributed to him in the past. After all, when a man stops believing in God, he doesn't then believe in nothing. He believes in anything. I think what we're observing in the West is a shift from Christianity, traditional values of Christianity, to fresh structures of belief. Think of the rise in net zero and the green agenda, personified by Greta Thunberg. Sort of takes on a quasi-religious feeling, with net zero goals presented as moral imperatives. Or if you look at what we can call the redefinition of biological reality, in other words, transgenderism, this bizarre concept that I say a man, but both genders can transition from one gender into another. These beliefs within our society have become quasi-religious. And of course, they're happening at a time when Western societies are abandoning their Christian values. But as G.K. Chesterton said, they're not abandoning Christian values and replacing them with nothing. They're replacing those values with a sort of quasi-religious belief that does not add coherence and connectedness to our society. I found the following lengthy quote from a website called World Invisible, which I'd like to read to you. I've said that Asia and the ancient world had an air of being too old to die. Christendom has had the very opposite fate. Christendom's had a series of revolutions, and in each one of them, Christianity has died. Christianity has died many times and risen again, for it had a God who knew the way out of the grave. But the first extraordinary fact which marks this history is this: that Europe has been turned upside down over and over again, and that at the end of each of these revolutions, the same religion has again been found on top. Yes, that's true. That's true, but I'm anxious that that's no longer the case in Britain, that Christianity has finally breathed its last breath. And you have to look at local councils at this festive time of year who refuse to adopt the word Christianity or Christmas in their celebrations. Instead, they opt for things like seasons greetings or happy holidays. In fact, anything really that substitutes the word Christmas in exchange with something that's meaningless and arbitrary. And of course, recently, this month, I believe, maybe at the end of last month, we learned that the most popular boy's name in this country is now Muhammad, with Noah coming in second. A biblical name, the second most popular in this country, an Islamic name, the most popular. And once again, this also indicates a shift from the traditional Christian beliefs to an Islamic worldview. You only have to look this week, for example, in Parliament, I forget the MP's name, but one of the so-called independent MPs who, by the way, is an apologist for the terrorist group Hamas, who sanctioned marriage between first cousins and claimed in our Parliament, in the British Parliament at Westminster, that this country should be more like the Arab states of the Middle East. And I'm inherently concerned about these new religious and quasi-religious dogmas that are emerging. I think what we're observing in the West is a shift where new belief systems emerge to fill the void left by traditional Christian structures. So I would urge all of us as a society to try to understand the importance of Christianity, not necessarily from the supernatural perspective, but the cultural relevance for both British society and Western civilization. Without Christianity underpinning our society, we're heading for dark times. But let's hope that, if you want, like Jesus, who was capable of rising from the dead, that Christianity can, in a way, be revived, even if it's just an appreciation of its significant cultural values, as I try to do. I know I'll be investing more time in the next months and hopefully over the coming years to learning more about the importance of Christianity, but it's the cultural splendour of its significance that I subscribe to and understand the importance for Britain and for the West. Christmas Day is rapidly approaching, and I really do wish everybody, British Democrats members, supporters, and also just the general British public, a tremendously Merry Christmas and a joyous New Year. Cheers.